Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Elden Ring tier list video, and this one is admittedly a very overdue one. We're finally doing a sorcery tier list for the patch 1.08. Things have changed over the last few patches though, lots of differences in 1.07 where many different things were changed, as well as a few specific callouts in 1.08. So this tier list, S, A, B and C, is going to be some of the top picks I think for general gameplay and considerations, whether it's really good in PvE, really good in PvP, or ideally good in both. There's a lot more sorcery in the game than the ones we're going to look at today, but these are my top picks for all-around sorcery gameplay. Starting at the bottom with a good example, the Glintstone Arc. Now, this one in late medium game or full late game is not a good pick. However, it is one of the best, if not the best, starter spell in the game and should be on the list because of that. As a long-range AoE, really fast cast with tiny stat requirements, and it was even made cheaper on the FP in 1.08. It only costs 9 FP per cast now. This thing is insanely good in the early game, where it still actually staggers enemies when you use it, as well as piercing and hitting many targets at once. It's just that it falls off in terms of damage and output, and also stops staggering enemies as well in the mid and late game. So C tier is where it belongs, but it is absolutely top tier at the beginning of a playthrough. Next is Star Shower, which is actually a really good spell and has contextually become much more relevant as other, meta PvP sorceries have been made weaker. So Star Shower is now a great PvP specific spell. It's a great harass to chip out enemies and also force them into different options. There are so many spells and incantations that work great in PvP where you just use them to distract, harass, or force an enemy to make a bad choice. Choosing to avoid a Star Shower, now you get to cast a full, big, scary sorcery. It has a consistent place in PvP, but it doesn't do a ton of damage and it's also not really that relevant in PvE, so I keep it in C tier. Finally, for C tier, we have the Magic Glintblade. This one is another PvP specific one where you basically cast the spell and then after a delay it shoots out that missile at the target. This again is incredible in PvP where you're trying to harass opponents, giving them something that they need to pay attention to while creating space for you to cast other spells or hit them with a melee attack at the same time. Say you have a really powerful Ash of War you're trying to hit someone with by harassing them with a delayed spell at the same time. They pick their poison and hopefully they pick the one that's best for you. And this was also buffed to increase its poise damage, its attack power and stamina attack power against guarded enemies, so it is a much better spell currently. But I don't really rate it that much in PvE, so again, C tier only. Next up, we move to the B tier, where we're going to talk about Magma Shop. This is a fire damage sorcery, which is of course pretty damn rare. They also improved this in 1.07 if you didn't know, improving its damage by a respectable amount and also making it much cheaper on the FP, making this a reliable fire damage sorcerer. There aren't many options of this nature, and since you will go against enemies resistant to magic damage, having a fire damage option is always going to be good, especially in the many sections of the game where enemies are very vulnerable to fire. Just having it as an option you can slot in whenever you need is going to make a playthrough much easier. So by no means is this crazy OP, but I think it deserves consideration and deserves B tier for that. One that I could even rate higher than where I'm going to put it is the Swift Glintstone Shard. The purpose of this is to be very cheap, very fast, very spammable harass. It won't deal much damage and it certainly won't stagger enemies, but it will chip them out, allowing you to finish them off if they are low in a convenient and quick way, especially in open world. And in PvP, it works great to interrupt people trying to cast spells or incantations. It's absolutely vital in content where you are using a build that uses slow casting spells or incantations that can benefit from chain casting. You see, if you jump and use this, then instantly follow it with the follow-up spell or incantation, you'll skip to the fast part of its animation. Chain casting is really important for any of those chain castable spells, and so it must be considered for that reason. But now we get into the good stuff at A tier. Let's start with one that might be controversial, Comet Azur, which I'm putting at A tier and not S tier because this thing has no relevance in PvP. Even in free-for-all or team deathmatch, you're just not going to hit people with this in any consistent or reliable or relevant way. But in PvE, it does remain the absolute powerhouse, where you channel that comet into a target, and there are many ways to improve its damage, there are many ways to improve how long you can channel, and it was an absolute meme sorcery main spell during the launch of the game. It remains to this day an incredible way to chunk through enemy health, and of course is an absolute boss killer to this day. It has its problems and it does require a lot of setup, but its power is undeniable, so I think it deserves to still be an A tier, but I just don't want to put it as an S for that reason. Here's a fantastic spell that deserves an A tier though. This is Adula's Moonblade, which is great in both PvE and PvP. It's like the enhanced version of the Greatsword spell, where you swing and you can swing back again at good range, cleaving through enemies. It also comes with that Icy Mist follow-up, which has some respectable range to it and a sort of slice. This is a top tier pick in PvP for many people, but it also sees a lot of use in PvE. The damage is great, and the frost stats build-up is also fantastic. The thing is, this was made better in 1.07. They reduced the FP cost, they made it have better stamina attack power, and the frost stats on the blade part, that's improved as well. So, as a Frosty Slice option, it's top tier. It might not be the highest DPS potential or absolutely broken, but it is an incredibly common and meta pick for good reason. Therefore, A tier is where I think it belongs. Much like Carrion Piercer. I absolutely love this spell. Also great in PvE and PvP because it's got incredible range and you can pull it out mid-combo quite surprisingly, catching people out in trades or combos in PvP, dealing incredible damage and sending them flying as well. Or in PvE, much the same. Whether you're using it in combo, spamming it on its own, it has really good range, deals really good piercing damage, and knocks enemies down, which allows you to follow up with another and another and so on. It's a consistent, reliable source of damage and is incredibly useful in so many sections of the game. In 1.07, it was also improved to be cheaper on the FP. It also has better attack power and recovery time, so you're not stuck in it nearly as long as you used to be. This is a really good spell then, and while not broken, it's a great pick. Lastly, for A tier then, we have Ranni's Dark Moon. This is great for many reasons. I mean, just the fact that it's a moon spell means it's kind of like a black hole that moves. You're able to offensively deal damage with this thing while absorbing enemy spells, which is awesome in PvP if you get lucky, or can be very useful against certain bosses. The problem here is it's quite expensive on the FP and it is a slow cast, but it does great damage, and there's a really important part of this spell. Specifically, the Ranni's Dark Moon lowers magic negation by 10% for 60 seconds, like a really powerful magic debuff. So keeping that debuff on a target for a fight where you're using magic damage, that's obviously vital and really important. In PvE, where this is more relevant and easier to land, keeping that debuff during a boss fight makes you deal so much more damage throughout, and so it's a top tier pick for that reason. In 1.07, they even buffed it, making it cheaper on FP, making it all the more worth using. But now we come to the S tier, where things are kinda crazy. Let's start with an undisputable top tier pick for any sorcery build. It's Terra Magica. While standing in this rune you put on the ground, you have 35% magic damage increased, and that is ridiculous. I can't imagine any build using magic damage not wanting that. Even in PvP, it forces people to run into you, which can be a trick you use to your advantage, baiting people into horrible trades in your favor, ideally while you're standing in it. If you're able to, say in free-for-all or team deathmatch, get off screen, put this down and do a meaty cast while standing in it, you can absolutely destroy people from off-screen spell usage. In PvE, I mean, there aren't really mind games to worry about here. You put it on the ground, you stand in it, ideally, roll around the attacks while staying in it and benefiting from that massive damage increase. It is ridiculous. This is required for mage builds. Much like, I think most people will agree, Kyrian Slicer, a top tier pick for up close, fast, quick attacks. This is a PvP powerhouse, mega useful to interrupt or finish off low enemy players, going so quick that you'll often poise stagger people, which is fantastic. Using it just to interrupt people makes this a top tier pick, but the damage you'll deal while landing multiple of these hits at once is scary. In PvE, it's great to finish off low health enemies all the same, say in a boss fight, or when you're dealing with really short punish windows, get one or two quick slices off and move away. If you ever encounter anyone with like really low poise, this thing is going to destroy them. It's so good that it was actually specifically nerfed in our current patch of 1.08 to deal less damage PvP specifically, but I still see it all the damn time. It may not be as broken as it was in PvP, but it's still an absolute top tier pick, and I think S tier overall still. Next for S tier though is Knight's Comet, a top tier Comet style spell for just its output and ability to deal good damage. But what's really important about Knight spells, and this one in particular, is it ignores that tracking aspect that happens in PvE. Boss fights that are agile and, well, scary like Melania, every time you cast a spell at them, they'll probably just dodge it or sidestep it. Well, Knight spells like Knight Comet here, they ignore that. enemies simply won't dodge it, so they just tank it, meaning this is extremely consistent DPS in every boss fight and frankly every PvE situation ever. I think it's S tier just for how reliable you can deal damage with this thing. But now it's our last pick for the whole list and S tier. It's Rocksling, which was nerfed in a pretty important way, but it's still absolutely incredible. If you're a sorcerer, you're going to deal with magic resistant enemies. So having, say, the fire suggestions, the ice suggestions we've talked about, that can be really important. But the best option for dealing with magic resistant enemies is a physical option as a caster, which is ridiculous that we have that. Rocksling is exactly that. Spam it and deal great physical damage while also staggering enemies at range in a really reliable way. The way that it was nerfed was basically you used to be able to fire this at mega far range when cast in a specific way, which was kind of stupid and a little bit broken in the open world, and they sadly removed that, which is understandable, and it's more of a reasonable spell in the open world now, but it's still really good. For staggering, for physical damage as a sorcerer, that's incredible, and you can get it fairly reasonably early in a playthrough. I think it outshines the other sorcery options for different types of damage when you want to avoid just magic damage. It's probably the best pick overall for its DPS and consistency. But there you have it. That is our complete and finished list for 1.08. This was my first time doing a sorcery tier list though, so let me know if I've missed anything, things that have changed in recent patches or are just really good for any reason. But I hope this video was helpful and interesting to you. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.